Hello and welcome to this series of tutorials on SecurityHQ's Risk Center. My name is Chris Cheyne and I'll be walking you through the session today. So today we're going to be talking about how to work with a risk once you've created it and to walk through the risk management lifecycle in terms of how to update a risk, how to edit the risk, how to visualize the risk, and also how to work with mitigations and assignments of mitigations to the point where you've got the risk in a managed state. We created this supply chain risk here, which was associated with a supplier as a third-party threat actor. And you can see here in the risk register that it's landed with a risk score out of 1,000 of 256 based on these parameters here, based on the impact, likelihood, threat, and the weakness. We can see a quick overview in terms of the attributes of this risk, including who it's assigned to, when it was created, and the target date for its closure as part of the overall risk register. But if we really wanted to get into the detail of this risk, we'd click onto the view and you'll be presented with this the risk card here. Now we've just created this risk, so there's still details that we'd want to fill in to create a little bit more business context around it, but you'll be familiar with some of the detail that we've already configured as part of the create risk previous video here. So I'll show you how we're going to add a little bit more detail into these things here around the overall risk description and dependencies in just a moment's time. If I just collapse that for the moment, what you can see here is there are four groupings here, again directly associated with the steps that you went through previously to create the risk, and you can view the parameters that you've already configured here. So I've got the adversarial threat actor for a compromised partner organization, and we can see here the capability, intent, and targeting scores that we've configured, and the resultant score that's carried through into the threat score is a score of 8 based on these parameters. Again, it's editable. We've got the threat event here, where if you remember, we configured only one threat event, and that is to obtain unauthorized access from that supply chain. And the score of 50% is derived from the likelihood of initiation versus the impact. So it is the multiplication of those two things together creates an overall moderate risk score, which carries a weighted score of 50% here. Again, if we feel that is too high or too low, we can always edit that. There's some nice contextual information here around the associated MITRE techniques and tactics, which we can use for more sort of defense and prevention type of planning and data analytics as well. Under the weaknesses, you can see the vulnerabilities that we've configured. Largely, the vulnerabilities associated with this were around specific controls, and you can view. We can edit those. So these are some of the controls that we thought were, let's say, control gaps, which are effectively vulnerabilities around account management, supply chain risk management, access enforcement, and least privilege principles here. And if we feel that there are any of those where we need to, increase the severity score because there is a particular significant gap, or we've over or underestimated that, we can always edit and change those. Under the impact, we can see the assets that are tagged into this, and in this case, what we have is we have a Unix operating system that we tagged in as an asset, and under the impact score, we can see what was a particular CIA impact that we configured as part of the previous configuration. I've got a score of 8, which is carried forward from the high confidentiality scoring that we've configured here, and that's carried forward into the risk scoring as well. Now, moving on to the interesting part is the mitigations. So you may remember, as part of the create risk, there was the mitigations that were presented here that are carried through from the create risk threat profile. Now, we can, if we feel that some of these are not applicable at this stage,
because a lot of these are pre-configured. We can close those directly before we start managing those. So we might say, for example, usage conditions. That's not something that I'm necessarily concerned about as part of this particular asset. So we can go ahead and close those. So we're left with only the particular mitigations that are applicable to this risk or this business condition here before we start. Now, what we might want to do though before we get going with this risk is to update the risk itself to add a little bit more context around it, because at the moment the additional risk descriptions and dependencies are not really described here in detail. This is where you need to put the business context. So let's say, for example, I'm concerned about a third-party supplier who is supporting my HR application. So they've got remote access in 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world to be able to help me maintain and manage my HR application. I'm going to use that as a scenario here. So the additional risk description that I'm going to put here is supplier X has direct access into our HR application for management and maintenance. This holds PII data. Okay, so that allows us to sort of put a little bit more, context around it. The dependencies might be, in this case, there might be that this is an essential managed service with high business dependence. There we go. So now we've got a little bit of, specific business context around that. And I'm going to move this also in terms of the step that we're going to take the mitigation through into a mitigate phase. So we're going to move it. It's unassigned right now. We've just created the risk. It's in the unassigned status. I want to move it into the flow of mitigation. But as you can see here, there's a number of different steps that you'd classically take a risk through. Eventually, we might get it to the point where it's completely mitigated, or we might get it to the point where we've mitigated enough of the individual elements to get it to an accepted or a transferred status. So I'm going to move it into mitigate at the moment. I'm happy with everything else, and save and close out. And you can see here what we've got here is a log of the changes that have been made. And we might want to add some comments around the changes. Chris edited blah 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 based on certain factors. Okay, good. So now we've got a little bit more context there, and as I said, we can then go through and start to actively mitigate or manage the mitigation of these risks. So we can add additional mitigations as we go through. There might be a specific thing that we would want to do as well that is very specific to your organization. So we've got this HR system. We might say that we want to add something which is very specific to that application that only you know about. Go ahead and create your own custom mitigation here that will be added to the tracker.
So we hope you found this video useful, and remember, we're always here to help. And if you need any further information, please do reach out to us at securityhq.com. Remember, we're here 24/7, and we're always here to help you with any of your cybersecurity needs.